For most of the college football year, we've been on here talking about who we think is the best, who we think is going to come out on top. And we've had a lot of predictions. Some of them have been right, some of them have been wrong. But the fact of the matter is, we are down to four teams left in the college football playoffs. This is the first year of the 12-team format. And some of them we didn't quite predict. Some of them, like I said, we did. We're going to take a deep dive into these semifinal matchups. And we're also going to talk a little bit more about the transfer portal. Is it open? Is it closed? Is there leeway? There's always something. There's always a door open. I'm your host, Matthew Reardon, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I'm your host, Matthew Reardon, and with me today is none other than David Street.
What's up, everybody?
And Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
Well, guys, like I said, we are down to the four final teams, the final four, if you want to phrase it, just like college basketball. And that is between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, Penn State-Nittany Lions, then you got the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Texas Longhorns. This might not have been on many people's bingo cards going into the Final Four, but you have to win when it matters most. Me as a Duck fan, I can attest to that. You need to win when it matters most, and these four teams have done just that, earned their way into the semifinal matchups. But one thing is for certain, at least for one of the first games we're going to preview here, is that it is a long time coming for one of these teams to possibly be the national champion, as it has been a while. Some teams, such as Ohio State, has won it. They beat my Ducks in 2014, which was kind of sad, but they have won it a little bit more recent. So, guys, let's just jump into the first game here. We have lots to cover, and that is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Penn State-Nittany Lions. As I already alluded to, the last time either one of these programs won a national title was in the 1980s. Me nor David were even born yet. We weren't even a thought, okay? That's how long it has been. These are two predominant franchise our organizations, schools, because the names. We've always heard of Notre Dame. We have always heard of Penn State, but it's been that long since one of these teams has won a college football national title. Ed, this is not an old joke, but what was it like the last time these teams won? Can you remember it?
I watched both of these games.
Yeah.
I was 10 years old. It was really the time that I started watching college football. Um, it was 1986. It was Penn State playing Miami in the Orange Bowl. Joe Paterno against the upstart Hurricanes, the establishment versus the young kids. And it was really a tale of two ideologies at that point because of the different way that people went about things. At that time, Big Ten really ruled everything when it came to college football, and everybody else was just trying to catch up. So it was a different world back then. And at this point, this it's a world that uh, both of these schools are hoping to go back to the hallowed halls of Lou Holtz uh, and his great motivational way of speaking with a difficult way of hearing him speak, uh, if you can, um, versus Penn State trying to get a national title that is not related to the old regime that got that organization, that school in trouble with that whole Sandusky thing. It is a way to turn the page and try and make the next chapter and just move on from any resemblance of that whole mess that really has tarnished Joe Paterno's legacy.
Yeah, and David, I'm going to ask you just that, just what Ed was pretty much talking about. I know we've personally haven't experienced this, but how tough can it be to constantly have that shadowing over you with those allegations Penn State had to suffer through? Because it's always a distraction. But here they are in the semifinals, and I mean, I like to say they deserve to be there.
Well, I think obviously anytime something horrifically bad like that happens, I don't think that shadow is ever, going to go away. But I think Ed makes a good point that certainly this would be the turning of a page for a new, you know, a new era.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be able to turn that page into a new era and be that team that year that finally was able to say, we got that behind us. But that's not the only uphill battle Penn State's going to have to face here. There are many storylines in this game, and one of them we've talked about almost every single show here, and that is the coaching, which is a big storyline. Can they get over that hump? But one of the storylines in this game to me that I've been most intrigued about is whose run game will be more effective. Because these two teams, uh, they do like to run the ball, but they like to run things a little differently. Penn State has what we like to call a two-headed monster in their backfield. Uh, every time I watch Allen and Singleton run back there, it's just it's so strong, it's so powerful that it's it makes me wonder how our team's going to be able to stop this. Well, here's the thing. A lot of teams haven't been able to stop those two running backs. So you know that they are going to be getting the ball quite a bit in this game. Where on the other hand, Ed, Notre Dame likes to mix things up with their run designs and their scrambles. Riley Leonard is their second best rusher. He has about 800 yards on the ground this year. So how do you see this going for these two teams when their run game?
Well, it all depends on the fits of the running game itself. Riley Leonard, half of his runs are out of the pass game. It is either RPO or it is scramble drill or it is recognizing a coverage that has freed open an alley for him to, as they like to say, you never go broke taking a profit. So you get down the field, you get the next first down, you live to see the next play. Whereas Penn State, they're thinking 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but with the way that their offensive line operates, it does operate in more of a downhill scheme where it's one cut and go. Well, when they can one cut and go, they get to that second level, and then those backs, Singleton and Allen, can be more explosive on that second and third level of the defense.
Yeah, and that's going to be essentially really what's going to happen is uh, they are two different runners. It's almost like when Sony Michel and Nick Chubb were at Georgia. Two different types of runners, but gosh, were they dominant, and you didn't know how to stop them, and that's very similar to how these two running backs are. So it's pretty much going to be which running back is going to hit 100 yards first type of deal. It's almost like a competition between those two, but this shouldn't be a surprise. This is how football is now. You saw, I'm going to go to the NFL, Detroit Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. It's the two tandem backs that are just they're different in their run game, but they complement each other. So we've seen it in college, we've seen it in the NFL. But David, I'm going to ask you this question because this is where I think it's kind of be tough for Notre Dame. But can they generate enough passing offense to slow down the front seven of Penn State? Because I know that Abdul Carter is questionable, at least as of right now. He might have been cleared, but if he could play, it's going to be a very tough front seven.
I'm not sure if they will be able to generate enough pass offense, Matthew, but to be honest with you, I don't think it's even going to matter that much because, in my opinion, this matchup screams a 13-10 game. Neither of these quarterbacks scare me passing wise. Drew Aller, especially with Tyler Warren, is certainly better than Riley Leonard, but neither of these quarterbacks scare me that much. And then the other thing too is that I think I think you have to look at Notre Dame and conclude that they have the obvious coaching advantage, especially after the way that Marcus Freeman just outcoached Kirby Smart. And, in the past 3 or 4 years, only very, very few coaches have been able to outcoach Kirby Smart. And not only did he outcoach Kirby Smart, but he basically made Kirby Smart panic with all the moves he made in game. So, yeah, going back to your question, I'm not sure if Notre Dame will generate enough of a pass offense, but I really don't think it's going to matter that much.
Yeah, I've always said that I think Marcus Freeman was the right coach for the job. And even if he doesn't make the national championship game or even win it, I think that this just shows that he definitely was the right coach for the job for Notre Dame. And I think they're going to have a bright future there because it's tough nowadays to be a college football coach because of the transfer portal. I mean, this is Riley Leonard's first year there. They didn't have a whole lot of time together, but here they are in the semifinal, and I think that does make a great case for a great coach as well.
One
Yeah, David.
and just one more thing, and then think about it. If Notre Dame ends up winning a national championship this year, that's going to look so bad for Brian Kelly because Brian Kelly left Notre Dame to win a championship at LSU, and so far that hasn't happened. So if Marcus Freeman wins a title at Notre Dame before Brian Kelly does at LSU, that's definitely going to be a bad look for Brian Kelly.
If only LSU had Notre Dame's defense last year with Jaden Daniels' offense, that's a natty
Yeah.
right there.
Oh man.
But they didn't. You can't put two teams together. But speaking of defenses, these two teams boast two of the top five scoring or overall defenses in all of college football. Notre Dame have the number 2 opponent points per game defense versus Penn State's number 5. So Penn State's giving up 15.8 points a game, whereas Notre Dame's giving up 13.6. So just like you said, David, unless something crazy happens, this is going to be a low-scoring game, slugfest, and just like Ed said, this might be the quickest game we'll see all weekend, actually all year, because I see a lot of running. And one thing about Drew Aller is that they do pass, he does make nice check downs and some easy passes to a Tyler Warren that's still going to keep the clock running. So it's going to be quick, it's going to be fast, but it is going to be like a rock versus a rock here, especially with those defenses. Then I did talk about Drew Aller, Tyler Warren, Ed. Can
Yep.
Drew Aller find more than Tyler Warren in their passing game?
Well, he's going to have to at this point because Notre Dame is not going to let a tight end just roam free out in the secondary. I realize that Penn State has periodically through the year just schemed up some ways to get him open or even put him in wildcat quarterback, just different ways to get him the ball. But Drew Aller needs to not panic when he cannot find Tyler Warren. He needs to get to Evans. He needs to get those checkdowns to Singleton because Singleton's not just a runner for them. He is their checkdown. So getting him in space on those swing passes, on those early screens, that will slow down the pass rush of Notre Dame, and that'll be just another feather in the cap for Penn State's offense to get rolling down the field and not feel like they are just running into a brick wall.
Yeah, and Jeremiah Love for Notre Dame. A lot of players are banged up right now. It's they've played so many games. It's very competitive, but he banged up his knee in the last game against Georgia, which he re-aggravated it from his injury against USC. It's tough because they're going to need him to have any chance in this game to balance things out for Riley Leonard. So I hate to see injuries, but injuries are a part of the game, which also kind of bolsters even more to the point of just how good this Penn State running back tandem is because they played in the Big Ten. Big Ten is very physical. And the fact that they have two running backs over 1,000 yards is very impressive. And I'm sure they're banged up, but they seem to be pretty healthy based on how they're playing. But Ed, one more question for you,
Sure.
and this is Notre Dame specifically, is when it gets to the fourth quarter, can Notre Dame trust kicking a field goal to win the game?
I don't know if they can. That there's going to have to be a lot of going for it on fourth down because I'm sorry, you cannot trust getting a field goal to win the game in a high pressure situation when you're only converting 54% of your field goals on the year.
Yeah.
Uh, there's 134 Division One schools, and Notre Dame ranks 131st. That is ridiculous. So, and it isn't like Penn State is that much better. They're only converting at a 72% clip, but that's still 20 more percent than what Notre Dame's doing. And my goodness, that is frightening as a Notre Dame fan, especially when you're going to get into a slugfest that is going to be heavy on premium points. Because I doubt that you're going to wind up having a 52-second span like you did against Georgia, where you roll up 17 points and the rest of the game you're just coasting. That's not going to happen again. So that Notre Dame has to put a premium on getting into the end zone because I don't know if they can trust having a kicker decide this game for them.
Yeah, can we just talk about how that was kind of a once in a lifetime anomaly there? Because not only did they score those points in that few seconds, they did that against Georgia. Those two things just don't happen, and I know David knows. You just don't. It's almost impossible to do that against Georgia. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to kind of put that out there. That was quite the anomaly that they were able
Well,
to do that.
Well, and to be fair, and by the way, I just wanted to address you talk about, Notre Dame being in the Final Four not on everyone's bingo card. They were certainly on my bingo card. I have Notre Dame in the championship. Of course, I had them losing to Oregon, so now my bracket's busted. And listen, okay, as a Florida fan, it's always nice to get its ass kicked, right? But from a neutral perspective, and I've said this many times before, but this was not per Georgia standards, this was not a great Georgia team. So if there was any team for any Georgia team for Notre Dame to beat, it certainly was going to be this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talked about how there's many different storylines in this game alone. It seems like every time I'm thinking of questions to ask for this game, the next one just keeps getting better and better and better because there's going to be, I feel like, many storylines and many factors that can swing this game. And of course, what is one of the biggest factors in all of football that can swing a game is turnovers. Which team will make the critical mistake first? And points off of turnovers. We've talked about how these are two of the best defenses in all of college football, but something's got to give. And Ed, you talked about Drew Aller can't panic if he can't find Tyler Warren. If he does he create that first mistake, that first turnover?
There's a greater chance of him creating the mistake than Riley Leonard creating the mistake. Right now, uh, going into this game, Notre Dame has the number 2 turnover margin in the country at almost 1.5 turnovers per game. That is a recipe for success, especially when you are built to be a tough defensive minded team that runs the ball, controls the clock, and controls the pace of the game. With the way uh, that that would work against Drew Aller is Drew Aller. They do a good amount of play action and to try and get the ball down the field the to Tyler Warren and those other couple of receivers that they actually do the throw the ball to. Uh, when that winds up not being there, that's when we're going to see Notre Dame take advantage and get those turnovers and start heading the other way. On the flip side, it isn't like Riley Leonard is looking to do like bomb shots off of play action. They're doing a lot of mid-range throws off of play action. Their wide receiver core is only averaging about 12 yards for three of their receivers. Their three top receivers are averaging about 12 yards per catch, which that tells me that play action game is to get the ball into the intermediate throw, not the deep throw. So that is more about getting to the first down marker and not getting themselves in trouble by trying to bomb it out and missing and creating a turnover that is completely unnecessary.
Yeah, because Notre Dame's got a complete ball hawk and Xavier Watts, their safety, who has 6 interceptions on the year. He's going to be looking for that Drew Aller mistake. I mean, he's able to read the ball, and that's something to really look out on when it comes to that. Because Penn State does, outside of Tyler Warren, they do have some speedy receivers. Amari Evans is very fast, and he's become a big deep threat for Drew Aller as of late. I mean, he's got I think he averages almost 19 yards of reception, so that's there. But someone's going to make that mistake, and if it's someone out of the two, at least quarterbacks, I know more than quarterbacks make mistakes, but it would be Drew Aller. So that's one of the bigger storylines to pay attention, because a turnover could be the factor in this game, the deciding factor with how close this game we think is going to be. Which brings me to the very final question as far as storylines go before we make some predictions and rankings here is which coach will have their team better situationally prepared. We got Marcus Freeman and we got James Franklin. David, you want to go ahead and take the reins on this one?
Well, I'll make it as simple as I can. I mean, before I said that Marcus Freeman outcoached Kirby Smart, a guy that very few coaches have been able to outcoach. So it's simple as that. I think Marcus Freeman is going to have his team better prepared.
I'll go ahead and ask you the same question, Ed. Would you agree with David, or you think this is the year that James Franklin seems to be more on top of things?
James Franklin is more on top of things, but he is not as on top of things as Marcus Freeman is.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman, he's a player's coach, but he's also, I feel like, that coach that is he's going to have his guys ready, and
Yeah.
he knows the importance of this.
And I want
So,
to
yeah.
I want to add one more thing too, that I think you could argue that Notre Dame's embarrassing loss to Northern Illinois has forced Marcus Freeman to be more on top of things, because ever since that one loss, Notre Dame has been flat out destroying their opponents. So he's kind of been forced to be more on top of things, and I think that will continue when he goes up against Franklin and the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, that loss was such an upset that it gave NIU an open invitation to the Mountain West. So moving on up in the world, NIU, sure you are. So let's go ahead and do some rankings here on these two teams. We're going to separate it here in some categories. And I want to hear what you guys have to say in the audience as well. So make sure that you comment here on these rankings here. We're going to start with the offense. Which of these two teams do we feel has the better offense? Ed?
All in all, I'm going to say that Penn State has a better offense. They've got the pieces to be a much better, more well rounded offense than what Notre Dame has, which is more scrappy. Penn State can run multiple ways and still be effective down the field. Notre Dame, I feel, is a little bit boxed in with what they want to do. And I think that leaves the door open for Penn State to be the better, well rounded offense going into this.
David?
I'm gonna take Notre Dame, and the reason why I'm gonna take Notre Dame is because for as much as Riley Leonard may not be the greatest passer, Notre Dame is one of the best rushing offenses in the league, and Riley Leonard is certainly a big part of that. And I also don't feel like if Notre Dame lost their top weapon, that I think they would still be able to hum along. Whereas if Penn State lost um, Tyler Ward, and obviously for his sake, I hope that doesn't happen. But if Penn State ever were to lose Tyler Warren, I don't have as much faith in Penn State as I would in Notre Dame if Notre Dame lost their top guys, if that makes any sense. So it's funny Ed talks about Penn State being more well rounded, and that's a good argument. But I'm going to argue the same, but for Penn State instead. I not Penn State, Notre Dame. Excuse me. I just think Notre Dame is a more well-rounded machine.
Yeah,
Well, and if I can,
yeah,
Yeah,
just as a quick rebuttal, I don't disagree with you, David, in the sense that Notre Dame knows exactly what they are.
yeah,
They do
exactly.
not
That's
deviate
my
from
point.
that
Yeah,
whatsoever. I just think Penn State does have a better overall offense to work with than what Notre Dame does.
that's fair. And yeah, that was the point I was trying to get across. That Notre Dame knows who they are. But yeah, your point's well taken.
yeah, and this one is actually pretty close, more than I think people really think. But that is because Notre Dame they they play such clean football, and to some it may look boring and bland compared to Penn State, but it still gets the job done and is still very well efficient. But if you were to ask me, all right, like I'm asking, who do I think has the better offense? I'm going to take Penn State. I saw what Penn State did even against Oregon. And I'm not saying Oregon's this prime defense, but they're no slouch. But Drew Aller and that offense I saw can hang. And with having those two running backs, I compared them to Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, which is a great comparison right there for those running backs. I just feel like to me that offense is better. So I'm going to go with Penn State there. And since there's three of us, I think that makes it an easy majority there. So I think overall, I think we'll go with Penn State being the better offense. But this is all just one man's opinion between us. So let us know what you guys think on who has the better offense. Defense. We've already talked about both these defenses, and they're both very strong defenses. I do think that uh, when Penn State has Abdul Carter, they do have more playmakers because Abdul Carter is a top 3 prospect. He is legit. But overall, though, I really feel like Notre Dame is a well-oiled machine on defense. They know their assignments. They don't skip a beat, and they are consistent. Have they played the same level of competition, say Penn State has? No, but each time, each game, time and time again, they have proven to be very consistent, and that's what's also helped them get here. So think defense, I'm going to have to take Notre Dame here. David?
I'm going to take Penn State, and it's pretty much precisely for the reason you gave
Yeah.
that Penn State has, yeah, Penn State has faced tougher competition. I mean, the defense was certainly not the reason why they lost to Ohio State. Now, granted, that was during a time when you could argue that Ohio State was still trying to figure things out offensively, but that was still a good marquee defensive performance against them. So obviously, both of these are elite defenses. They're two of the best defenses in the league. But I'm going to go with Penn State here. So we'll see if I'm in the minority again.
Well, David, you will not be in the minority.
Yes.
I'm taking Penn State's defense, and the reason I take it is the one consistent I've seen in the top teams of the Big Ten this year is having a running quarterback, a
Hmm.
quarterback that extends plays with his legs. And what is Riley Leonard? That's the exact same quarterback that they've seen this entire season. So they are fully prepared to handle and work off of trying to keep him somewhat contained and not let him leak out the way that Georgia let Riley Leonard leak out, that caused some of those drives to extend further than what they should have against the Bulldogs. So I am going to take Penn State's defense. I realize that Notre Dame, they are a ball hawking defense. They are a defense that likes to turn you over, but as a schematic and the players up front that will help out the back end, I believe in the trenches, and that's where Penn State has the advantage, in my opinion.
If you don't mind, I kind of want to go. I kind of want to go back to the offenses because I want to ask you guys a question about Notre Dame offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock, who, if you guys remember, was the same OC for LSU when Jaden Daniels was there for a couple of years, and then won the Heisman Trophy. Right. So, are any of you guys surprised that he hasn't been able to turn, Riley Leonard into an elite passer? Like, I understand that arm strength isn't really something that you can coach. It's just something that you naturally have. But he obviously played a big role in Jaden Daniels making that massive, massive leap from, year to year. And he hasn't really been able to do that with Riley Leonard. So are you surprised that he's not been able to turn Riley Leonard into an elite passer?
I'm not surprised because I don't think Riley Leonard reads defenses that way. I don't think he reads defenses to exploit the different zones through the passing game. I think he reads defenses to expose the zones in the run game a lot better than he does in the pass game.
Yeah, I think he reads them more intermediate versus the whole field itself. So I would agree there. And it's also just 1 year, too. This is Ray Leonard's first year there. So I think that's also of note. Jaden Daniels, uh, he had 2 years at LSU, right, David?
Yeah, 2 years.
Okay, so that's only one more year, but in college, that's important. So it doesn't surprise me as much. And Jaden Daniels has shown that uh, he's a playmaker. He really is, and it's transferred over to the NFL. So, but I see where you're going at there, and maybe if he had another year with Riley Leonard, I don't think he would get to the level of Jaden Daniels, but he may bring out some more in him. But at least he's playing some clean football, which I think helps them with their offense. So, but defense and offense looks like we're going Penn State here. I think this is going to be another one for Penn State, and that is the special teams matchup. Ed, you already talked about it. Notre Dame uh, ranks pretty poorly amongst field goals, and that is very important. Is more important than punting, but punting does play a big factor because you're talking about we're playing with the field position, and so punting is just as important. But I just think it's easiest and obvious here that special teams, we're going to go with Penn State here, just because unfortunately Notre Dame has shown that they can't really live up to the big game magic from a special team standpoint. We all in agreement there?
Yeah, there's really no point in having a debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've also covered who we think's a better coach.
That we have to. I think that Marcus Freeman is going to take that one. That may be the only one Notre Dame wins in this conversation. David, do you have
Also,
something
like, okay, how the 54% on your field goals? That has to be an NCAA record. That has to be for
to
the worst field goal
They're
percentage by a
the
team.
they're the third worst.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's still teams worse than that.
Yeah. This year alone. So, yeah, that's pretty sad. Especially when you consider yourself a top team without a conference. So it's you need to be better at that, and that could be what causes them a national championship game. You need to be complete out there, and yeah, they've won their games to get here, but
Well,
a field goal could cost you a championship.
Well, and just think of it. Just one last thing, and we can move
Yeah.
on. But like, just think of the potential storybook ending that could create. That Notre Dame's abysmal kicking, ironically, ends up being the one that saves the team that wins the national championship. Like, just think of all the headlines from that.
Yeah. I mean, just a 35-yard field goal, they probably can't even trust their kicker to get the job done. So it's sad. And like I said, that could be something that causes them to not win a championship. So Marcus Freeman needs to fix that. But Coaching, though, we will go Marcus Freeman. So for the most part, that's 3 Penn State to 1 Notre Dame. So biggest question is predictions in this game, guys. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be close, in my opinion. David, I know you talked about a prediction earlier, so I know you dropped a score. So if you want to go ahead and drop that prediction, I'll let
Yeah,
you.
well, I said that this matchup screams 13-10, and I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to go with Notre Dame over Penn State, 13-10.
Ed.
I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to go with Penn State 16-11.
Oh man, Ed, I thought for sure you were picking my score. I too am going Penn State. I'm going 16-13. So there, it's going to be one of those games. I think it's almost obvious that it's going to be one of those games. Um, we could be wrong. We could, but I just feel like we're going to be right. Which brings me to the current spread right now. Odds are always subject to change, but the spread is 2.5. So uh, it's and the over under we got 44.5. So right now with our predictions, we're clearly taking the under. And I would advise taking that under.
So
Yep.
basically, Vegas thinks that this is going to be like a 23-21 game or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which
that's right in
is
line.
which is high scoring if you look at these two teams as far as their defense of what they give up. So,
Yeah, yeah.
This is like two mirror clones of Iowa over the past 3 years.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, except for Iowa just didn't have an offense at all.
No, not at all.
At all. So, Ed, is there any specific prop bets that maybe you've seen online or anything that's kind of intriguing?
Well, I would definitely, if you're into the prop betting thing, I would definitely be looking at Tyler Warren as an anytime touchdown for sure, and Riley Leonard for Notre Dame getting over 50 yards in rushing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Those are the two prop bets that scream to me.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean those are definitely some of the obvious ones that are almost guarantees to hit. So yeah, if you're trying to build up that parlay, I definitely would advise taking those ones because those are pretty high chances of getting. So yeah, Vegas has Notre Dame winning this game, and even the ESPN matchup predictors got Notre Dame with a 58, almost a 59% chance. But two of us got Penn State, so. We're going to see exactly how that plays out, but I think it's going to be if you like defense, I urge you to watch this game. All right. On to our next game, the last semifinal game that we're going to preview here. That is the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Texas Longhorns. I talked about it on our last show that this is kind of the media's national championship game because that was a question I want to ask you guys is who does Vegas, who does the media, who does the college football want in the national championship game when you look at the game we just previewed in this game? Well, can it just be these two teams? Well, it can't be. So, Ohio State, Texas, this is a big time game. If you look at the viewers after this weekend, this is going to be probably the most watched game easily. And one of the biggest questions we got to ask here is which team can make big plays or the biggest plays, because I think it's almost guaranteed that these two teams will make a big play or two. Ed, Longhorns are your team, so I'll kind of let you answer this one. This question first is which team do you think is going to be able to make more big plays?
Well, both teams, their offense is predicated off of making the bigger plays down the field, making those intermediate throws that turn into long touchdowns or being accurate down the field, 25 plus yards down the field. Both of these teams rank very highly in explosive plays, 20 plus yard plays throughout the season. And if either one of these teams cannot replicate that in this game, then it's going to be a long day for somebody. And that's really the issue here is which team will be able to make the plays that initiate their offense and create rhythm for their offense, whereas the other team, are they not going to be able to make as much, or is it going to be tit for tat in that realm? That's what we're looking to see in this. Right now, Ohio State is a juggernaut uh, with their passing game and those big plays coming out on the from the wide receivers on the outside. Texas, they've been a little hit and miss. Uh, we saw them get out to an early lead against Arizona State, having those big plays, but it really got shrunk after that. So that's the question mark that we see going into this game. Who is going to do it? I think it's going to be Ohio State. I hope it's the Longhorns, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, we will indeed see what happens because this is going to be a for sure game to watch. If you're watching this show and you don't see yourself much into college football, I really urge you to watch both these games, but this game for sure. These are two big programs that are guaranteed to bring it all this game. David, we've also talked about, you know, when the points are there, take them. I think we're a big proponent of that. But could this be one of those games where it's tough to match up field goals with touchdowns? And what I'm getting at is, can Texas score in the red zone? Because if the field goal's there, we urge them to take it. But the way Ohio State's playing, like I said, sometimes it's tough to match field goals with touchdowns. How do you feel in this game? Will Texas be able to score in the red zone? And do you support them going for a field goal?
Well, will Texas be able to score in the red zone? I'm not sure, but we all know that Steve Sarkisian is one of the more aggressive play callers in college football. So I think certainly he'll try to take his chances. But if I were him, I would probably settle for field goals. Why? Because Ohio State has the best defense in the country, and you just don't want to. You don't want to risk getting in a bad situation against a defense like that, even in a game where everything is on the line. So yeah, I think when you take into account just how monstrous and how elite Ohio State's defense has been all year, I think you have to go with the safer move here, in my opinion. What do you think, Ed?
Uh, Texas's red zone offense is abysmal. They rank 108th in the country in
Damn.
red zone conversion. So I say take the points where you can get them, but that's been an adventure as well. So it's that kind of harkens back to the make big plays aspect of it, because it seems like if Texas isn't scoring from the 30-yard line, then they're not scoring. It is really frustrating to watch as a Texas fan to see them struggle so much with when the field gets condensed, shrunk, and not able to get those points that will keep pace with a team like Ohio State that is just running on all cylinders.
Yeah, and when they have a field goal kicker like Ronald McDonald, was it Burt Auburn? They he's been pretty good throughout the whole year. But we saw the struggles he had against Arizona State. I still think you need to put your trust in him. Field goal kickers need that. They need to see that their coach still has faith in them. They made a mistake. We all do, but you put your faith in them and take the points. I'm gonna say you need to take the points always, or not always, sorry, when it matters, because who knows how much that'll add up to it. So it's going to be tough for them to score in the red zone because they are a big play, long ball type of team. And so when it comes within the red zone, they do struggle a little bit. As Ed said, their stats, aren't really behind them to score a touchdown, but they need to get those field goals. Uh, if you watch the Oregon game, or even the game against Tennessee, most of the games this year for Ohio State, you've heard the name Jeremiah Smith. He has kind of taken over college football and your televisions if you've watched it. He is an insane talent, and one of the big questions, big storylines in this game is will Ohio State be able to replicate that? Will they be able to get the ball to Jeremiah Smith, and or will Texas be able to stop him? You're gonna hear me talk about Jeremiah Smith like I always do when I talk about him. I will always give respect where respect's due, and I will say things how I feel that they are. And I think Jeremiah Smith is one of the best college football wide receiver talents we've seen in some times. The fact of the matter that they weren't able to do this almost every game was shocking to me. I just think that he has God-given talent and a God-given size for a receiver. This guy is near the same size as Julio Jones, and if you watch Julio Jones either at Alabama or in the NFL, uh, he was a man amongst children when he was a wide receiver. So uh, that's how I look at Jeremiah Smith here. And I don't want to say he's a man among children because Texas is a insanely talented defensive group. And it will be tough for Jeremiah Smith, but at the end of the day, I think that he will get his licks in, and it's just going to be tough to really stop a talent like that. I know Ed could talk about it a little bit more because the Longhorns is his team, and I know he has faith in his defensive backs here. And this isn't your having to try to cover Cam Scadaboo. This is covering a wide receiver instead. So how do you think Jeremiah Smith fares against your guys' secondary?
Well, Jeremiah Smith has developed through this season. He's been able to be moved around in that offense. Chip Kelly is using him as a great chess piece to attack different parts of the field rather than just setting him outside the numbers and just go run down the field and make a contested catch. It's not really about that anymore. But we're talking about a secondary that has the Jim Thorpe Award winner in Jade Barron. You have Michael Taff, who is a second team All American. You've got Andrew Makuba, who is a ball hawking transfer cornerback that we got from Clemson and is just meshed really well in this defense. So this secondary, what I think we'll be able to bracket, we'll be able to create combination coverage with Jeremiah Smith that I'm not sure he's been able to see up to this point. But the problem becomes the other side with Ibuka. He's the great equalizer in this because if Ibuka gets loose, then Jeremiah Smith is going to get loose, and all bets are off at that point.
Yeah, you kind of need that other person that's balancing out that offense, and yeah, Emeka Ibuka is that guy who is a great talent himself. So it's just Jeremiah Smith just happens to be the name that a lot of people talk about, but Emeka Ibuka will be able to create big plays if they continue to focus their attention on Jeremiah Smith. But Ed, we go back to this whole neutral site thing. Does Texas, are they able to create momentum with that advantage?
This is the same building Jerry World that they won the Big 12 championship last year. Texas fans travel very well. It doesn't matter that there's going to be about a foot of snow in the Dallas Fort Worth area trying to get to the game, which traffic is already terrible in the Dallas area. This is just going to make it worse. But if you're talking about a traveling road show, Ohio State has a great traveling road show. I remember them coming to Austin the year after Texas won the national championship game, and they flooded the streets of Austin. They flood the streets of wherever they're going, and that will be matched by Texas flooding the streets of Dallas as well. It's
Yeah, from
much like the Red River shootout. It's two complete schools merging into one small area.
yeah, I mean, from what I heard, Ohio State fans can get pretty nuts.
That was a good one, David. You're waiting all show for that one, but
Yeah, I'm right.
They're not pretty.
it's true. I remember being on a layover in Denver, Colorado, at the airport, and I'm on the escalator and I just hear these guys on opposite ends yelling OHIO, the only thing that their team knows how to spell. And I'm just like, here I am in Denver, Colorado, having to hear that. But they do travel well, and they're usually well represented. So I anticipate they will be there. I mean, look at the Rose Bowl. I know Kirk Herbstreit. He went to Ohio State, so you probably don't want to seem like a homer, but he said it was 60-40 Duck fans there, but all I saw was red. That's all I saw there was Ohio State fans, just from my eyes. But they do travel well, so they will be well represented. But David, will this defensive front for Ohio State, Cody Simon, Jack Sawyer, will they be able to get Quinn Ewers to the ground? If so, do you think it will be pretty easy? Or do you think this Texas offensive line's going to do a good job protecting their quarterback?
Oh, I think they'll absolutely be able to get to Quinn Ewers. Not only do I think they will be able to, but I think Ohio State needs to develop a game plan that's predicated to getting to Quinn Ewers. Because Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, this is basically Quinn Ewers, right? When he's not under pressure, he's arguably the best quarterback in the country. But when he is under pressure, he kind of shits the bed.
Quinn Ewers, I feel, is kind of like the Sam Darnold situation with the Jets. When things start flashing before his eyes and he starts feeling pressure that's not there and not feeling pressure when it is there, it gets into the whole seeing ghost thing. And that is a problem.
Yeah, it does become a problem, and it's kind of like what we talked about with Drew Aller. Mistakes can be made. So,
Didn't
well, yeah,
didn't Drew Aller actually once make a quote about saying how he felt like he was seeing ghosts? It was him or some other quarterback.
that was Sam
I just
That was
Darnold.
Sam Darnold. That's
oh
why.
okay.
That's why
Yeah,
I said that.
that
Yeah,
was
that
like
makes
that was like the meme of the year.
yeah, I remember that. I remember when that whole thing became a meme and went viral.
Yes. Ed, I want to ask you a question because you may know this off the top of your head. It's kind of going to lead up to my next question, but how many snaps did Arch Manning play against Clemson and against Arizona State?
He played 0 against Arizona State. He only played a couple of snaps against Clemson.
So, which both, well, I don't, both were kind of close games. Clemson did have a run at one point where they did make things interesting. Arizona State ended up tying the game against them, went to overtime. So, does that kind of show their hand, at least Sarkisian's hand, that when things are tight, things are close, they don't want to put Arch Manning in? Because will we eventually see more packages of plays for Arch Manning in this game, or is it just going to be Quinn Ewers or bust?
I think it's going to be a matter of what kind of rhythm the running game can produce. When this running game can produce some rhythm, you will see Arch Manning come in with a few more packages of plays rather than just having to drop back and throw it 50 times a game. When the game becomes more of a passing game for the Texas offense, Sark trusts Quinn Ewers to run this offense.
Yeah.
When it is a game in which a running threat is needed to help create some confusion for the defense, that's when we'll probably see Arch Manning. I doubt we're going to see Arch take significant snaps unless something horrific happens to Quinn Ewers or there is a complete ineffectiveness for the first quarter plus.
Yeah, and just at the end of the day, we have to remember that this is still Quinn Ewers' team. Even with all the snaps that Arch Manning took, Arch Manning is still the future of that program. The future is not here yet, so I think Quinn Ewers has more than earned the right to have this be his team in a moment like this.
And Arch Manning is no Tim Tebow.
No.
No, exactly. Yeah.
The sport may be football, but that doesn't mean that you can't play chess. What I'm getting at here is that we are going to see a schematically stylistic matchup between Chip Kelly and Pete Kwiatkowski. Is that how you pronounce it, Ed?
Kwiatkowski. Kwiatkowski.
Kwiatkowski. Uh, this is going to be very interesting. We talk about, of course, the head coaches, but this is the matchup that you really need to be looking at because, all irony aside, Chip Kelly pitched a perfect game against Oregon last week, which is a tough pill to swallow as an Oregon Ducks fan, but he did. He pitched a complete game, a perfect game against Oregon, uh, and he's really got a great rhythm going for Ohio State. Where Kwiatkowski, on the other hand, is done some phenomenal things for this Texas defense and really confusing other quarterbacks. So, how are we going to really see this play out, Ed? The only reason I'm asking you this is because, of course, Texas being your team and all.
Mm-hmm.
How do you really see this playing out?
I see this playing out in the way that a lot of the games that Texas has played plays out, and that's Anthony Hill Jr. being a complete wrecking ball to an offense.
Yeah.
He is the outside linebacker that is totaled 107 tackles for the year, 7.5 sacks. If he can get to Will Howard, whether it be spying him or on creative pressures, which Texas doesn't tend to do a lot. They do a lot of man up uh, on defense and play zone in the back end. Well, when Anthony Hill can create havoc, that opens up Colin Simmons coming around the edge for so it becomes a two-way go for the Texas defense to get to the quarterback. It's a party in the backfield at that point, which that is what Pete Kwiatkowski wants to be able to do. The great equalizer is going to be how quickly will Howard be able to get the ball out to those receivers, Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith, before he gets hit. Because I saw Will Howard make some anticipatory throws in that Rose Bowl that are going to be tough for the Texas defense to be able to cover. On the flip side, this is the number 2 passing defense in the country in Texas. So that is why this creates such a unique dynamic, as you said, a chess matchup between two of the premier assistant coaches in the country.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's gonna be a big time coaching matchup. There's a lot of similarities with these two teams. So let's go ahead and do our rankings for this game as well. And these teams, just like we did similar to the last game. Let's go with offense here. Who do we feel has the best offense going into this game? I'm going to go with Ohio State. And I'm going to go that with that, not even because of Jeremiah Smith, but Quinshawn Junkins and Travion Henderson can also be very complimentary running backs. And I feel like there is some times where they're not even really getting any of the hype because, everyone is talking about Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka, but these are two uh, of the best running backs tandems in all of college football, right behind Penn State's running backs. So, offensive wise, I'm going to have to go with Ohio State here. Ed?
I'm going to go with the Texas Longhorns having the best offense in this game, and more so because of the offensive line, more than the wide receiving room. The wide receiver room, I think, is a slight edge toward Ohio State because of the two guys, but Texas has 4 to 5 guys that they can count on in the passing game, and that includes Gunnar Helm at the tight end position, which he is one of the best tight ends in the country overall. I think as a pure quarterback, I think Quinn Ewers is better than Will Howard. Schematically, uh, we can. It would be fun to see Chip Kelly play Steve Sarkisian at any kind of board game, just to see what that looked like. But overall, I think the Longhorns have a slight edge, and it's just because that offensive line is better built than Ohio State's.
David.
Well, both these teams' offenses have been inconsistent throughout the regular season, but I'm going to take Ohio State because I think Ohio State has the better skill position players, and I think you also have to consider the fact that Ohio State destroyed Tennessee, top three, top five defense in the country, and the same thing with Oregon. Oregon's not a top five defense, but I think they are a top 10 defense, certainly borderline top 10 defense. So I think when you look at how the offenses have been performing in the postseason, and just you look at the competition, you look at the defenses that they face, I got to give the edge to the Buckeyes.
Yep, I mean that makes sense there because of how things have kind of been going into this game. Let's go flip over to defense here. Ohio State has played some good defense, especially as of late, and they play in the Big Ten. You have to have a good defense to play in the Big Ten, but here's Texas, coming from the Big 12 to the SEC, where you need to have a very stout defense. And I think Texas has done great this year defensively wise, which is why I'm going to have to put them on the top of my ranking with defense in this game, or just even in general. That I think the Texas defense has been proven time and time again, and so I think that they'll be able to step up to it in this occasion as well. So I'm going to go with the Longhorns on defense here. We'll go back over to you, David.
I really wish that I could make this a tie because I think both these teams' defenses are just so freaking good and just equal to each other in a lot of ways. But alas, there has to be a winner. While I think you can make an argument that Texas may have the better individual defensive players, I think overall as a unit, I'm going to have to go with Ohio State. And especially with the way that Texas's defense just let, one man go out on them. Granted, that one man was Cam Scattaboo, but still. So that's why I think, like I said, I think you can make a case that Texas has the better individual talent, but I think overall as a group, I'm going to take Ohio State.
Well, so I'm sure you're all expecting me to pick Texas. And I'm here to tell you that I think I won't. I'm going to go with Ohio State for the same reason that I chose the Texas offense. I'm choosing the Ohio State defense. I think the Ohio State defense, their defensive line and their front seven are such game wreckers that I think that it's inevitable that they are going to get to Quinn Ewers and create some havoc, which will cause some mistakes to happen. And those mistakes are going to be capitalized on by Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs has improved so much over this season since coming over from Alabama that he is basically the heart and soul of the back end of this defense, and it is going to be he's going to show out in this game more so than what I think anybody's anticipating, and really showing on the biggest stage that he is the guy for that defense. So I'm going to take Ohio State's defense, and we'll see where that lands
Yeah.
between Texas' offensive line versus Ohio State's defensive line.
Yeah, it's definitely a toss-up. Definitely a coin flip on as far as those two defenses because they are very stellar. We'll go quickly on these last two, at least this one. Special teams. I actually am going to give the edge to Texas here. I think Auburn has been one of the best kickers in college football. He has made some mistakes, but at the end of the day, I think that he could be that kicker that could get it done, and he does have a nice boot on him. So I'm going to go with special teams here for the Longhorns. Ed?
I'm going to go with the Longhorns for a different reason. I'm going to go with their return game. I think their return game is more dynamic and can create more big plays than what Ohio State's can at this point. While Bert Auburn is the field goal kicking for Texas is about 10 percentage points below what Ohio State's is. I think the return game for Texas does give them an advantage in the special teams that Ohio State just can't match.
David?
I'm actually going to go with Ohio State as well, and it's actually for the return game as well, especially with and correct me if I'm wrong, but Caleb Downs has been used as a return threat, right? Like I very distinctly remember seeing him just go crazy on special teams for a few games, and when you have a guy like that, I don't see how you can't give Ohio State the advantage.
Yeah, he's been back there. He's been explosive, but I mean, we saw in the last game, at least for Texas. I mean, they had a return touchdown. So, explosiveness, they both have it. They both have that it factor there. So, I don't think you go wrong there. Coaching, really quick. Uh, I'm gonna go with Sarkisian. I'm not trying to sound like a hater, but I've never really felt like Ryan Day's a good coach. That's just one man's opinion. Uh, I Chip Kelly I feel like is probably the reason why they're doing so great there, but I just have never really felt like Ryan Day's that good of a coach. Sarkisian has coached under the the great Nick Saban, so when you have been able to be part of that coaching tree, you have some knowledge, and I think Sarkisian has really used that knowledge to help build this Texas team into a national title contender. So I'm going to go coaching. I'm going to go Sarkisian here. David.
So here's the difference between Sark and Ryan Day. Okay, Ryan Day was essentially given the keys to a nice car, and while he hasn't wrecked it, he hasn't totaled it or anything like that. He also hasn't really done anything to make it better. He hasn't taken it to the auto shop. He hasn't taken it to your place, Matthew, to get some upgrades. And while Sark really built that Texas team from the ground up. Like maybe ground up is not the best terminology, but he certainly built that Texas team way more than Ryan Day built Ohio State. Ryan Day took over a fantastic Ohio State team from Urban Meyer. So that's why I got to go with Sark here with the way that he built Texas.
All right, Ed.
There's a difference between building a program and being able to coach a game. And with that in mind, I'm going to take Ryan Day. I think Sarkisian is a phenomenal program builder and a phenomenal play caller. But there are certain coaching decisions that I always question with Steve Sarkisian. I'm a big fan of him. I am glad that he's here as a Texas fan, but I, there are questions that until he can answer them uh, in a way that I am pleased with, then I'm going to continue to question Steve Sarkisian in coaching on a game by game basis. So I'm going to take Ryan Day because he doesn't have to worry about the play calling duties. That's all on Chip Kelly. Ryan Day can focus on head coaching decisions that affect the game, and he's got that. That is his job during the game. That is not his job plus play calling duties and thinking about the offense and how players are positioning themselves. That's not his job right now. Ryan Day's job is to make head coaching decisions, and I think that is going to lead to a better uh, a a better thing for Ohio State than what Texas is working with.
I get it. That actually makes total sense as far as being able to be an actual head coach versus calling those plays. He does have that covered, so I can see why you picked Ryan Day there. But only one team could win here in this game. So David, let's go with predictions here. Who you got winning?
If you were to ask me during the last time that all three of us recorded together, I probably would have said Ohio State over Texas, 42-17, with just the way I was talking. I still think Ohio State is going to win this pretty handily, but not by 20 points. I think Ohio State is going to win 31-14, and with the way that Ohio State's offense has been performing, you got to think that 31 points is a pretty good defensive performance by Texas. So yeah, 31-14 Ohio State.
All right, Ed, this is your time. Who you got winning this game?
So I got to go with my guys. I know I'm not supposed to bet with my heart, but I I got to go with my guys. But I'm gonna say it's within the 5.5 point spread that uh, the last time I saw this game was sitting at. So I'm gonna call this 34-31 Texas.
Yeah, I've just like you, David. I've kind of hyped up Ohio State not only because they beat my team, but because what I've been able to see them do in these two playoff games that they've had so far against Tennessee and Oregon, and Texas on the other hand. Yeah, they just scaped by against Arizona State, but it was still a win. And then they did kind of similar with Clemson, let them get back in the game. But the thing to me in this game is we've seen Ohio State been pretty complete in their last two games. I don't think we've seen a complete Texas team, and uh, maybe they've shown who they are, and maybe I'm going to be dumb with this, but I think I'm going to have to take Texas here. There's something about it that's telling me that Texas is finally going to bring that complete game per se, where that is going to stump Ohio State. I do think Ohio State will still be able to get points and have an offense, but I just don't think that it's going to be how they were able to against Tennessee and Oregon, especially early on like they did. So that's why I'm going to take the Longhorns here. Give me 35-27 Texas in this game. So I don't know why I'm shocked by it. Ohio State, with what they've shown, should win this game, but I'm going to go with the Longhorns. David?
Well, quick question, Matthew. Did Ohio State's backups play in the majority of the second half of y'all's game?
No, they still had Will Howard and them play. I mean, at least in the third quarter and so, especially because Oregon did score some.
Okay.
But yeah, so they
Well,
aren't fully rested, but yeah,
well,
they were
I'm,
able to take the foot off a bit.
I'm glad I got that answer because I think this lends to this point that for as much as we're talking about Ohio State's offense and how good they've been lately, keep in mind they only scored 7 points in the second half of that game. You know?
Yeah, and they had some of the best first quarter numbers in both games. Uh, Texas isn't that defense that I don't think you'll be able to do that against, at least early on.
Yeah.
So maybe later on, like Ed will say, we'll jump out to a lead, but then let them come back in the second half. But I do think that they won't have that success against Texas that they did against Tennessee and Oregon. So that's why I'm going to go with Texas here. So, but yeah, like Ed said, as of now, Vegas does have it. OSU is 5-point favorites. So Longhorns are the dogs in this game. Over and under is at 53.5. So we're definitely taking the over in this game, kind of with where we're sitting at here. So at least me and Ed are, but I think it's gonna be a great game. I think, like I said last week, it's gonna be the national championship before the national championship. um, we're kind of running out of time a little bit here, so kind of going to do a little speed round here. Of note, North Dakota State won their 10th FCS championship game in the last 14 seasons, defeating Montana State 35-32. For perspective, their first trip to the championship game was in Obama's first term as president. So that just shows you their dominance. They've been completely dominant there at the FCS level. So North Dakota State there with that championship. Did you want to say something, David?
I just got one thing to say about that, to say about North Dakota State. Come on up, okay?
Yeah.
Y'all, come on up to Division One. Come up to the big leagues. It's
Well,
time.
Montana State was undefeated going into
Yeah.
this game, and North Dakota State had 2 losses on the year. So fighting through what do you know, a playoff format, they they make it to the championship game and wind up winning it.
Hey, who they defeat on the way? Was it South Dakota State?
Yep.
So, yep. Um, There's just something about a team that shows up when it matters most. It's like Steve Spagnuolo's defense in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Um, the December transfer portal is closed with around 4,500 players declaring to be in transition. While the window is closed, Ed, it really isn't, huh?
No, it certainly is not, because there's so many different things happening, especially with this playoff right now, that uh, you've got the draft coming, you've got the playoff coming, going, and you've got head coaches being moved and changing positions and being fired, being rehired, all this stuff. So just to hone in on it, grad transfers, they have until February 7th to declare to be in the transfer portal by opting out of the NFL draft. So it's coming up fairly quickly for them. The college football playoff teams, the ones remaining, the four that we've talked about, they get a 5-day window after the season to decide whether they're going to be in the transfer portal. And just for context, as of now, of the four teams, there's 26 of them, 26 players that are in the portal already. Those players can't play, but they are still practicing with their teams until they get picked up by another program. And then the last thing, the head coaching changes does open a 30-day window for players to move in and out based upon who's going to be the coach that comes in and replaces them. And this is really the rule that everybody learned last year when Alabama and Michigan both lost Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh, respectively, created complete chaos in the transfer portal last season. So this transfer portal, yes, it's closed, but it isn't really, because they have to make these exceptions for the way that the college football season progresses. And my goodness, it is just a just mind melting task to try and figure out who is doing what nowadays.
Yeah, it's constantly going, constantly changing. There's just so much, and we try to keep as best as we can, and we try to keep you guys up to date as best as we can. There's just always so much more happening, more to come, and speaking of more to come, we got some news that's going to be happening here on this show, so we urge you guys to stay tuned for some of those changes that will be taking place here in future episodes. So on that note, that's about all we have today. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Please continue to tune in, especially to hear some of this news that we have to share. And hit that like and subscribe button and share these videos, and also comment on all these videos too. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you're thinking on these college football semifinal games. It's just, like I said, consistently happening. There's so much going on, and we want to hear from you guys as we go through it with you. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.